Welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs, your home improvement and remodeling podcast, where the two most entertaining guys discuss the do's and don'ts in home construction and in the remodeling industry. Remember that you can nail it, paint it, or just tune into the show. How about that? Here are your hosts, Colin Shaw and Jimmy Driscoll.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Studs.
It's us.
Hello Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Good, Colin. What's going on, brother?
Not too much. How was your weekend?
Hey, working.
You worked?
Working in my bikini as usual.
Oh boy, back in that bikini again.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. I went down and saw Billy Joel
That's right.
at Madison Square Garden, which was awesome. That's my third or fourth time seeing him.
And you had a nice meal after that too, right?
We did. We actually did one beforehand. We did a nice little Italian restaurant.
Nice.
And, a little veal Milanese. And
nice. That's good for you
couple
vegetarians
nice
out
glasses
there.
of red wine and all. So
Nice, man.
Nice.
All right, so good.
Yeah, it was good. And then we took the train, so nice and easy. You know, I've actually never been to Penn Station before.
You never have?
No, I've always gone to Grand Central.
Oh, really?
Multiple times to Grand Central. Never
one of the most filmed places in New York City.
Oh my God, how
Penn
great
Station.
that place
is!
is.
It something?
Oh man, it was
Yeah,
phenomenal.
it's beautiful. The architecture in there.
Yeah,
Next time
all
you
the
go,
stores and the restaurants and everything too.
Next time when you go in,
Yeah.
where the clock is, because in the center,
Yep.
wherever you come in, go towards the Oyster House.
Okay.
And when you go up the ramp to the Oyster House, it is like a big cathedral ceiling up there.
Yeah.
Have her stand in one corner and face the corner, and you go
And
over
run
on the
like
other
hell?
and you go over on the other side of the corner,
Yeah.
and you face that corner and say something in your regular voice.
Yeah.
It bounces up the roof all the way across and right down in front of her.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's the acoustics in there. It is so cool. You can just
Wow.
you can whisper.
Oh, very
You can
cool.
whisper. Yeah, it's really great.
Nice.
Very cool. One of the little things.
Yeah, it was a nice little experience. So it was something new for me.
Great.
Yeah. At
Right.
50 years old, still getting new experiences. That's good.
Well, the architecture in that place is amazing.
It's fantastic.
Yep.
I mean, I love Grand Central too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that place is beautiful as well.
Yeah, it is.
But it was just very different. Not what I expected at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm glad you had a great time.
Yeah, well, thank you. So enough about us.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk to our guest?
Who we got?
We've got John Dupra.
John Dupra.
Yeah, he's the co-founder and co-owner of Revel Woods. Hello, John.
Revel Woods.
How we doing, boys? Yeah, good.
Very
Hey, I
well,
want to
thank
mention I have come into Penn Station, and it is
Yeah?
wonderful. It is
Yeah,
well. I
it's
mean, obviously, if you're going to the Garden, it's the right station to go to.
Right, which I didn't pick up on before either. So yeah, no, we went in last time we went down to go see Billy Joel. We came into Grand Central, took a cab, which cost probably like $30 in all the traffic and everything else.
Yep.
I'm like, this was so much easier. And
Oh no,
yeah, we
Penn
walked right
drops
to
you
the
right
hotel.
at the Garden.
yeah,
no, it's the way
I
to
had
go.
no idea.
Mhm.
I'm a newbie. What do you want?
Well, you don't go there.
Not a city guy, I guess.
I live in New York, but not New York City. I'm like 6-hour drive from the city, so I don't go there very often. But when I did, I
You
did the
north?
training.
Are you north?
Northwest. We're about an hour east of Buffalo.
I was just going to say,
wow.
you near Buffalo. Wow.
How are those winters?
Rough.
Not great. Yeah.
Rough.
Man, you got a
Right
lot
up the
of
lakes.
snow.
Yeah, I live in Rochester, so our weather's a little different
Okay.
than Buffalo, even though it's only an
Yeah.
hour, but we're on a different lake. So Buffalo,
Okay.
I know this isn't like a meteorological podcast, but Buffalo gets the warm water off of Lake Erie because it's a shallower lake. So they get a ton of snow early in the year, but Rochester it's more off of Lake Ontario, which is a deeper lake. So we get it later in the season. So our March and April are typically horrible. And
Interesting.
but our November is not so bad, whereas Buffalo actually it's only an hour drive between the two cities, but it's we get the darkness. We call it the unicloud. It just sort of parks like this big cloud just parks over us from like November till about Mother's Day.
Oh wow.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Yeesh.
depressing. This is
Oh my
this is
gosh.
my pasty complexion. I've actually I get like a sunburn from my iPhone.
Yeah. Nice.
That's
You know,
funny.
like old people, even though we can go outside, it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. No, we get kind of gray
Uh.
here too, and then it just stays gray for multiple months. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we can appreciate that, but we don't get as much snow. Thank goodness.
No,
So that's why
you're
people
closer
listen
to
to
the
our
ocean.
Yes, exactly.
That's why people
Exactly.
listen to our podcast to cheer up.
That's right.
Then I open my fat jowls and it's all over.
And you make everybody smile.
That's
Isn't that
right.
nice?
Yeah. Awesome.
So,
Let's talk
John,
about this.
John, tell us about your company.
Yeah, happy to. So I guess in order to understand kind of what we're doing, I'll go back a little bit into my background. So I started in the flooring industry Right around when I was born. My father started right before I was born. One of those dreams, just someday I want to go and be in the flooring industry. And, props to him. He made it happen. Most people were
Nice.
off in LA being actors and stuff, but he followed his dream.
He knew where
Now
the chicks were.
he
Absolutely.
knew that
Yeah.
flooring, it was, DTF,
Yeah.
doing the floor. They had, so my parents got married right out of college, and, kids are expensive. So my mother got pregnant with who would eventually become me, and they needed some money. So he was working with a guy, kind of a temporary gig, learning to sand and finish floors, just as I'm going to do this for a few months, and then I'm going to go find my forever job, because those were things back then. And he, some more money, and the guy couldn't pay him. I don't say didn't want to. I make him sound like he's Scrooge McDuck or something, but he just couldn't afford it. You know how it is. We've all had employees where they need more money and we just don't have it.
Sure.
So he said, you know what? I'm going to go do my own thing. And he set off and went into business for himself. And 22 years later, moved out of contracting and started a wholesale distribution company. Meanwhile, I kind of grew up working with him, so it was just part of what I did. And then after college, I worked for a sandpaper company, the company that made the sandpaper in the flooring industry. And as I said, also followed the dream. Most of my friends went off to Broadway, but I worked hard and I got in with the sandpaper company. So it was, but I traveled the country with them for a while, got to know the flooring industry from a different angle, till eventually joining up with my father's wholesale company. And that's where we sort of morphed into what we're doing now. We started a separate venture where we said, okay, what is the future of this industry going to look like? And then rather than kind of prepare for it, like, oh no, Amazon's coming or whatever, we decided, once we had an idea of what could look really cool, we decided to implement it ourselves. And so Revel Woods was kind of created out of that exercise.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice. Now, I was on your site, so I have to say, it's a very easy site to navigate around, and I do have a couple of questions about that. So tell me about how, because when you go on, you can take a little questionnaire. So tell me a little bit about the questionnaire. How did it come about, and what's the purpose of that?
So this kind of makes you step out a little bit different than the other flooring stores, basically.
Yes.
Online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we originally we kind of thought, okay, well, I don't know if e-commerce is always the future for every industry, but some kind of online component seems to be essential for just about any business right now. Unless you are completely business facing, you have like 6 clients and they're never going to leave you and you don't want any more business. So we knew that online was going to play some kind of component, even if it wasn't direct e-commerce. But when you try to buy flooring online, wood specifically is it's a low-tech product because it's wood, but it's it's one of the oldest building materials in the universe, but it's a high-tech sale because different species and structures work for different situations. So what works in a cabin in Vermont may not necessarily work for a cottage in Miami. So we
Interesting. Yep.
So we knew that. And so rather than just say, like, when you go onto an e-commerce site now or almost any flooring website, it's like, here's everything we offer. Have fun. Try not to screw it up because it's really expensive. And and then when you do, don't call us. So but we thought, rather than have it kind of be a product-based website, we would rather go with what we call project-based. So we thought, and this kind of came about, we thought, okay, how do we take this personalized high-tech kind of sale and scale that to, no matter where you are, we can impart part of our knowledge onto whomever's on the site. And the way we kind of came about this, I was messing around on the internet one day and I was on a clothing website. I don't even remember what it was. It was Trunk Club or Stitch Fix or one of these. If you're familiar with it, this site's targeted towards men. And the idea behind it is men don't understand how to coordinate clothing. So rather than go and pick out shirts you like, you tell us a little bit about yourself and the style you're going for. And then they have an expert curate an outfit and they send you the whole outfit. So this belt goes with these pants, with these shoes, with the shirt, whatever. Everything here is going to work. So you don't have to think about it. So I was going through that questionnaire and I thought, like, we could do this. And so I went in and talked to one of my co-founders, whose name is also John, and it is in no way confusing ever. I said, hey, go to this website. And he's on this clothing website clicking around. And he's like, why? What am I doing here? Like, why am I here? And I said, this is how we would do it. And so through that, we created this idea that we call project-based sourcing. So before we just dump a ton of flooring in, and it's up to you to decide, do you need solid or engineered, or is hickory best, or oak or maple or whatever? We ask you some basic questions about your space that we know are important. So we have you name the project. Then we have you go through a basic questionnaire. We ask you the zip code, which we cross-reference with the Copenhagen climate rating for the entire country, so we know the climate in your general area.
Okay.
We ask subfloor, is it going directly over concrete, or is it like a wood-based subfloor? So in the Northeast, where you guys are, where I also am technically, it's a lot more kind of plywood or OSB, but in Texas and in Florida, it's a lot of concrete slabs. Well, that's important. You need to know that. So you don't have
And tell
claim on your hands.
Yeah, so tell our listeners why it's important to know if it's concrete or wood.
So that for that specific question, there are certain types of flooring that wood specifically, that we don't recommend over concrete. So concrete it's exactly it. It's a moisture issue. So there are some floors that go over concrete. We ask about radiant heat too, and it's the same answer for that. Not everything that's available is warranted or recommended over radiant heat, but there are some things that are. So you want to make sure when you're shopping, if you've created that space and said yes to radiant heat, everything you see in that results page is okay for radiant heat. So at that point, you're never, oh, I really love this. Oh, I can't have it because radiant and it'll explode and that'll be my fault.
Right.
So we really wanted to take that tool and find a way to personalize that sale to whomever whomever was on the site, but still have it be functional and not necessarily have to worry about going into a particular showroom, or, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like anything, certain showrooms are better than others. So we just thought, our thought process was, if we're making a recommendation, we're standing behind that recommendation, as opposed to you having to do research, find what you think is going to work, and then buy that from someone else. If we recommend it, we'll stand behind it.
Nice.
You must have a problem sometimes with designers.
Yeah.
If you deal with a designer, you go, well, that flooring is really not going to work. Or you deal with a homeowner who says, yeah, but I really like that. And I go, well, I know you do, but I can't guarantee it, because if you're going to do that, this is what the results are going to happen. I'm sure you must butt heads with that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a story recently, and this one was heartbreaking, because it was a designer we were working with in Vermont. The designers love this tool because they'll go to it before they even pick something. So then they'll create a space and they'll say, okay, they're a project, and they'll say, okay, this is what I wanted to do. Like, I know if I pick something that works in this list, then I'm good. So they don't have that problem of they fall in love with something, their client falls in love with something, then they have to come back and go, sorry, I know you fell in love with this, but it's not going to work. But we did have, it was a radiant heat based situation. There was a client in Vermont, and it was, I don't know how it was designed specifically, but there was a serious thermal loss issue. So not to get too in the weeds with radiant heat, I don't know how savvy your audience is on that specifically, but it can get really technical. And this was a really tall space with a lot of windows, and the only way they were heating it was radiant. So in order to achieve the heat level, in order to heat that space, they wanted to run the water for the hydroponic radiant heat at 140 degrees, which, aside from basically being a firewalker, that is nothing's warranted in wood. This isn't just our stuff. This is the industry standard, right? So the industry standard is nothing hot. The water can't exceed 85 degrees. And that's true for wood. That's true for vinyl. That's true for everything short of some ceramics and polished concrete. And so I told him, look, I can't do this. And the plumber had said, I've put this under wood before. We've run it at these temperatures. We haven't had a problem. And I said, I'm super happy for you that you haven't had a problem. But there's a huge difference between I've done this before and it will work, and I guarantee this will work, and I will pay for the whole job if it doesn't. And that's a huge distinction, right? So we had to walk away. We just said, look, I cannot, in good faith, sell this to you if that's how you're going to use it. And that was painful. But to answer your question, yeah, we do bump up against that. But in the end, we're not a I'm going to sell you this and then change my phone number so you can't find me again.
Right.
Our goal is
Yeah.
we want people to have, it's a boutique kind of experience.
Mhm.
So if that means, hey, unless you're going to put a forced air option in there and get that water temperature down, I can't in good faith. I'm not going to stand behind it, so I'm not going to take your money.
Right. Which makes sense. Yep.
We've dealt with the same problem, with the same issue, where a customer will like try, well, plain and simple, don't buy cheap flooring,
Right.
and we
Good
can't
advice.
guarantee it.
Mhm.
You can't guarantee it because it's cheap and it goes down cheap, and they think they're saving money and not even finished the floor and it's already coming up.
Oh yeah,
And
we've
it's just
seen
like,
that.
I told you. I
Yeah.
didn't want to say it, but I told you.
I have one customer that wanted to buy her own flooring online, and I have a flooring company that I use, up around us, and I showed them the floor, and I said, what's the price, and they told me, and I brought it back to her. She's like, well, I can get it online for cheaper than that. So my flooring company's like, we can't even get it that cheap. So I told her, I said, listen, there's a lot of red flags here, and you need to be paying attention to each and every one of them. She was adamant to do it, so we got the flooring, we installed it. Now she's getting like water stains on the floor throughout, and it's because it was never sealed.
Really?
And we're like, well, why would you seal it? It should come sealed from the factory. Well, that was the catch. So you have to seal it every 2 months in order for it to survive. And she's like, well, I never would have done that. And I'm like, well, I told you there's a reason why it was
That's
so
why
cheap.
it was $3, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And my flooring company's like, we've never had to seal these floors. They come pre-sealed. So somebody found a loophole where they got it from the company unsealed, and then it keeps failing over and over and over again, and she's beside herself. And I'm like, there's really not much I can do to help you at this point. Like you said, if I had supplied the flooring,
fix.
I would definitely have, stood behind it and, talked to the company and reinstalled all brand new if it failed.
Right.
But when you get it off the internet,
you don't know. Right. And that's
like you.
Right. Right. And so there is but we're not going to be the cheapest guy out there. I'm going to be straight about that right away, that we're not a whole, we cut out the middleman and now it's cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing with flooring, right? I mean, it's so based on commodity pricing. So it's very similar to if you go to the gas station and gas is, I'm going to make up a number, I don't know what it is in Connecticut, but it's $2.79, and you go to another place down the street and it's $2.78, and you go to another place and it's $2.83, and then you find a place and it's 99 cents. And it's like, okay, well, this is all based on the price of oil, which is set by, OPEC. So why is this 99 cents? And sure enough, because there's water in it, so it's and it's similar with flooring. If you've got something that is significantly cheaper than, and you're buying it kind of that same sort of level, like you're not buying containers of it, or truckloads of it, then that's exactly right. There's serious red flags that come up with that. So we take sourcing to a fairly serious degree. Everything that we have on our site, and we have access to thousands of things beyond that because of our position in the industry, but it's all from mills in the US and Canada that we know the owners of personally. We have relationships with them. I've been to 2 of the owners of our different mills we sourced with weddings in the last 3 months.
Oh, wow.
One was at the Ritz-Carlton in Montreal, which was very swanky. The other was at the Biltmore. Apparently, there's a lot of money in flooring.
I guess
that
so.
I'm not saying.
Right. So, John, I got a question.
You're still living off that sandpaper money, so.
Oh yeah, making it rain.
So, John, I'm a homeowner. As a homeowner, I also have a designer. I finally I'm creating the scenario. Or say my wife decides that she wants to design this whole thing. So we get on the phone with your company. I have these are my cabinets. These are my curtains. This is the color of my wall. I need a flooring that's going to match this. Can you, as a company, go, well, yeah, we got something that would fit that or compatible. And the person says, the designer says, can you send me samples? Can you do that? You do also do that? Send the floor samples so they can look at them and feel them and they have an idea what the flooring is?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So sampling, that's actually a great topic because sampling is one of the things that It's absolutely essential. In fact, if you were going to just go on the site and say, I'm going to get 2,000 feet of this thing that we're
Crazy.
selling, I would, I would look at you weird. Like I would be, hey, can I send you a sample of this? Like I'll pay for it. Let me just make sure you're okay before we do this, because I really don't want those angry phone calls. And I'm not saying people don't call, they get angry over crazy things, but we really try hard to avoid that. So sampling is essential. And so one of the things we've realized, because we're predominantly, the platform is basically an online platform, but you still have to see it in person. So we re-engineered flooring samples. When you go to a flooring showroom today, and if you've got a good one, there's some space and it's well laid out. If you go to not a great one, it's just like as much stuff as they can jam into this place as possible, and all these different racks from all these different manufacturers. It's like an arcade. Like you're walking through and everything's just screaming at you for your attention.
Crazy. That's just
Right.
crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Right, but it's today. So if you do it the way we've always done business as an industry, and so you get these big boards, they're heavy. If you're trying to take them someplace, like if you've got 4 of them in your hand, you're walking around like an angry gorilla. It's
Right.
So what we realized was like, okay, is there a better way to do this? And maybe there wasn't, but let's try. Let's just forget everything we know and figure out. Okay, so we asked ourselves, what does a flooring sample have to show? And we realized it was 4 things. It was color, sheen, texture, and variation. And so when we went through those 4 things, you have to know the color of the floor. You have to know how shiny it's going to be. You have to know if it's smooth or if it's scraped. And then you have to know how many knots and streaks and character you're going to get. Some are going to be clean. Some are going to be really rustic. So in that, with those 4 things, we know that really only 3 of them have to be seen in person. And that's the first 3: color, texture, and sheen. You have to see them in person. You have to feel it. You have to touch it. You have to see how it looks with your cabinets. You got to see how it looks at dawn and at dusk and in the middle of the night, because it can change. Color is very
absolutely.
contextual.
Yep.
So, but what we realized was that 4th one, variation, is why those samples are so big in those flooring stores, because they have to take 6 pieces and show you everything you're going to see in a tree across 1,000 square feet of flooring. And so we realized, like with our platform, if we could offload variation to photography, so all of our studio shots are 4 to 6 square feet, and in doing that, that's bigger than any flooring store sample you're going to get. 60 square feet would be a monster sample, and then you can compare the smaller samples we send you, because then the color, texture, sheen can be done with a relatively smaller sample. And so we experimented with what that size is. So one sample for us is 2 loose pieces. So it's portable. You can put them together to make a bigger sample, but it's not overly cumbersome. And then you just compare that to the photos on the site to go, okay, this has a lot of knots in it or cracks or whatever. So complex answer to a simple question, but sampling is super important. And yes, we absolutely, not only will we send you samples, we highly recommend you see it before you make that decision.
Right. Good call. Yeah, it's funny. I was at somebody's house just the other day, and they've decided to move forward with a bathroom project. And I was talking to them. We were down in their kitchen, and we were looking at some of the samples, and they said, we love this sample. I said, yeah, it looks great. And they go, come on upstairs to my bathroom. Let's see what happens to it. And we walked upstairs. They put it down. It was a gray that turned blue. I mean, it was blue. And it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like the walls were blue or anything else was blue. It was just the lighting,
in the room,
size of the room, whatever it was, that all came together. That's why it's so, like you said, so important to get the samples, look at them in different lights, and the actual artificial light, natural light, everything else.
That's a huge key.
Change. Yep.
It's like you can pick and paint, and I just tell people, you just can't put a strip on the wall. Roll it out. Yep. Let it set up. Let it cure for a few days.
Yep.
Because it's going to change.
Absolutely. And we've noticed it too. Like we'll put something on the floor. We'll look at it. Then we'll slide it over next to a window and see it in natural light. Changes. Yep. The game changes entirely.
Sure.
And it really we've had we were working with, I don't remember who it was. It was it was like a blogger or something. And they were doing their cabin, and we sent them some samples. They wanted something very light. And they kept saying, all of your samples look pink. And I was like, there's no pink in it. Like, I don't know how to take something that's white and make it less pink. There's no pink. But that was how it was looking in that context. Yeah. And they ended up picking something else. But But I was just like, yeah, I don't really know how to solve that. But I'm really glad you saw it in person, so that we didn't have a problem.
Absolutely.
Because I'm happy
Yeah.
to deliver a couple of pieces UPS versus 1,000 feet, and now it's like, what do I do with this, right?
Right.
But yeah, it is so important to see that in person. Completely agree.
Yeah.
So are you a distributor, or also do you manufacture the wood too, the flooring itself?
We're basically a distributor that's built
Mm-hmm.
a retail arm. So
Right.
we're kind of controlling that middle phase of the supply chain. We don't manufacture ourselves because when you get into the manufacturing level, no one factory can make everything that you would need for any
Right.
kind of flooring.
Mhm.
So
Right.
we would then have to specialize in a very narrow product offering in order to make any kind of sense. Because like most of our manufacturers, they'll tell you, even just a specific color and sheen, like one SKU, if they're running less than 4 pallets, which is about 3,800 feet, depending on the size of the board, they're not making any money. So it's
Right.
really hard to be specialized. So what we do is my father National Wood Flooring. We are connected across the country. So we'll work with designers where, let's say it's not even something that they need that's on our site, but they need something, some kind of pink unicorn spec that no one's ever going to buy again. But we have the relationship with the small fourth generation family owned mill in Western Pennsylvania that doesn't have a website that we know can make that. So we'll have access to it.
You go to the mills. You go check out some of their stuff, check out what their operations are and how they work. Do you ever do that?
Oh, 100%. We won't do business with someone we haven't seen.
Right.
We have very, very strict standards,
Mhm.
way better than any government standard. And just because we're harder to fool, I could bring a designer or a homeowner or anyone to a mill, and they would. I'm sure they have a great time, but they don't know what they're looking at, right? They wouldn't know they wouldn't know an end matcher from the sander. So it's something that we're a little tougher to fool. So we like to see the operation. We want to know how it's sourced. We want to know if it's engineered. What kind of glue is being used? Has it been independently tested for formaldehyde? What are those emission levels? We want to know, where did the wood specifically come from? Are you buying from? Is it
Good
northern red oak?
question.
Is it southern red oak? Because even though they're both domestically sourced, there's a huge difference between northern red oak and southern red oak, which is colloquially referred to as swamp oak. But there is some significant differences. So all of that matters. Illegal timber, when you talk about imported material, is a bigger trade than cocaine in the United States, believe it or not.
You could also be dealing with contaminated materials that you don't know where they're coming from.
It's a huge problem. Yeah. And there's been some larger stores whom I won't mention.
Home Depot. Home Depot had a real big problem.
Well, Lumber Liquidators had the biggest, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I would say I wouldn't mention their name, but 60 Minutes did a story about them.
Yeah, we have no problem. We don't have very many listeners, so we can just say nasty things.
We got enough.
Well, I don't want to get sued, but I will say that.
Why are they going to sue you?
Well, they can't. All I'm going to do is describe what was told in the 60 Minutes story. So they have a problem. They can take it up with 60 Minutes, with CBS, and not with me. But they or you guys, let CBS handle that. But effectively, what was happening with them was, and this was they pled guilty to this. It was a felony Lacey Act violation, but they said that it was unintentional. So whether or not you believe that, I guess I'm going to leave that totally up to you. But that was what they had claimed. But they were doing a couple things. So the first thing they were doing was they were sending out laminate flooring and engineered flooring that was labeled CARB 2 compliant, which for anyone who doesn't know, CARB 2 is the California Air and Resource Board. There is no national standard for formaldehyde emissions, but California has one in the state, and everyone else has sort of decided unofficially that if it's good enough for California, it's good enough for us. So they were forging, the supplier in China was forging the CARB 2 compliance certification. And then when 60 Minutes tested some of the samples, it was testing it, I believe, and don't quote me on this number, so it could be wrong. It was somewhere between 20 and 60 times the legal limit of formaldehyde. So anything with that flooring in there was classified by the EPA as an indoor air hazard. Like you couldn't live in that house.
Sure.
And people did. And we had customers of ours that had that flooring in their house, and they were having skin issues and respiratory issues, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then when they ripped the flooring out and put ours in, all the symptoms went away. So that was number one. The other thing
Yeah.
they did that was bad for different reasons was a lot of the lumber they were getting was being sourced. The white oak was being sourced from the far east of Russia in a Siberian forest that was protecting a specific endangered tiger. And so what happened is it was all organized crime between Russia and China. This was not directly, these were not lumber liquidators employees. They would go into the forest, they clear cut this habitat for this tiger, and then they smuggle it across the border into China. It's milled into flooring, and then it's shipped to the US and Canada, labeled as made from China. But the Lacey Act says you have to say the origins of everything you import. So they weren't saying Russia, they were saying China. And so there was about 300 of these tigers left in the world at one point. And they're starting to make a recovery now. But again, if you don't know your sources, you have no idea what you're putting in your house.
This is very interesting.
Yeah, so we're pretty involved in this. We're pretty passionate about this. So for us, it's where is it coming from? You know, how are you making it? Turn business away from American companies that we didn't agree with the way that we talked to a lot of their former employees. We knew a lot of people that worked there, and it was just an abusive environment. We said, no, thanks. Like, we're just, it's not going to work.
Right. No, that makes sense. Now, do you deal mostly with pre-finished flooring, or do you deal with unfinished as well?
So we can get unfinished. Our site is predominantly pre-finished. We have access to a mountain of unfinished, but at that point it becomes a little more of a commodity item. But we have sold some specific, like if you just need 2 1/4 number 1 common red oak, I would say we're probably not going to be. That's gasoline. That's like, why buy your gasoline when it's the same prices? It's very much a commodity item. So I don't want to, if anyone needs it and we've got something specific, then I'm happy to help them out, but I'm not here to rip anybody off either. So, but we have had specific wide plank, unfinished, engineered product that had to be sawn a certain way. And that's the kind of thing where we specialize in when it comes to unfinished. But pre-finished is our predominant bread and butter, if you will.
Gotcha. Now, can you explain dye lots to our listeners? Like if they wanted to say do one room with a pre-finished floor, and then they wanted to wait like a month or two and then buy, the same flooring for the room right next door, but it doesn't match up perfectly. Do you guys run into that?
I never get that question, but I get that problem all the time. So I'm really, that's cool that you asked that. Because most people don't even think about it. And it's something we think about all the time, but it's, we explain that to our customers a lot of times and they're like, what? It's fine. Shut up.
Right.
So that's so cool that you asked that question, actually. So dye lots are kind of interesting because you would think from a staining standpoint, when you watch these companies dial in those colors, it's something that they have someone there that's paid a lot of money that really watches that. And then you would think, okay, here's the formula. It's 2 parts red and 1 part green. And that's not really how it's measured, but I'm not good at this. So, but they would think you have a formula. That's the formula. It should be the same every single time, right? Except it isn't, because wood is a plant and plants are not plastic. So you could get red, white oak, or whatever sourced from a different forest or a different part of the same forest a year later, and it'll take the stain differently. So the way that they do color matching in the factories is they have a master sample and they dial in that color almost from scratch every single time they run it and match it to the master. And that's to avoid some of that dye lot issues, because where that was more common with a lower grade manufacturer is they're not going to pay for the materials or the person to do that level of work. So they're going to say, okay, we're running Serengeti Sunset, and then we're going to run more Serengeti Sunset in 8 weeks. And it's from the same can that they've mixed up already. So they think it matches, but the wood is different. And if you change the canvas, you change the color. And that's where a lot of those dye lots happen. The other thing that'll happen too is a company will measure it to the last run they did and not the master sample. And when they do that, it's like a game of telephone. It changes a little bit every run. And then 8 months later, you'll order Serengeti Sunset, which is, I hope no one's actually has a color called that, but it's, and then you'll see it's like one's bright orange and the other's like black, or it's not usually that bad, but you'll get some where they don't match. So it's
Yeah.
really important when we vet a manufacturer. That's one of the questions that we go through is we want to see that process. And are they matching to a master? How do they come about that? Because if you're going to be stocking even a specific color, then you want to make sure that when you're low and you have 3 boxes left, when you order in another couple of pallets, those 3 boxes can be mixed in. Otherwise, like you
Right.
just have 3 boxes of flooring, like 60 square feet. What are you going to do with that? Like somebody's
Right. Exactly.
big.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we think a lot about, and it's one of those things that we work really hard behind the scenes so that if you get things from different run numbers, you don't have to worry about it.
Right. Okay. Nice.
Cool.
That's a complex answer to a simple question.
And I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Anything else we need to touch on?
You seeing any trends in the industry these days, or things pretty much
Man.
unchanged?
So I guess trends in terms of materials, widths, colors, or all of the above.
So I see trends in the material. People
Okay.
choosing between hardwood, engineered hardwood, laminate, the luxury vinyl planks and tiles and stuff like that seem pretty popular these days. But there's also, there's that classic hardwood floor that everybody wants too.
Yeah, I think so. Wider planks and longer lengths have been very fashionable. Really rustic grade, hand scrape was fashionable, but now it's starting to come to more of kind of a Norwegian or Scandinavian look. Not Norwegian, specifically, but Scandinavian. But from a material standpoint, the vinyl thing's been very interesting because the tech in vinyl has gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of confusion out there as to what it actually can and can't do.
Okay.
And so we're seeing this is me just predicting this. Like I don't have a crystal ball here, but vinyl has been sold as almost completely bulletproof. It's waterproof. It doesn't scratch. It makes you toast. It does all these wonderful things, right? It'll save your marriage. And whether you want it saved or not. And so what it'll do though is it actually isn't those things. Like it's not bad, but it's not this amazing material, and it does not last longer than wood in terms of its overall, like its life cycle analysis. It's just the longevity's not there. So what I think we're going to see in the next maybe 3 to 5 years is a lot of these higher end homes that have put vinyl in instead of wood because it was cheaper and it looks great and they were told that it'll never have a problem. Vinyl, according to a friend of mine who sells vinyl, and we have access to a line of vinyl too, and we're working on one that's domestically sourced and responsibly sourced as well. It's one of the reasons we haven't gotten into it, because we can't vet some of the imported suppliers. So we're working on with a domestic one currently, trying to put a deal together. But is that it doesn't wear out; it uglies out. So like a difference between a leather handbag and a pleather handbag, or a leather jacket, pleather jacket. Like the pleather jacket's not going to wear out, but it looks like garbage. Whereas the leather jacket looks badass as it wears, right?
Yeah.
So that's and that's kind of what's happening with a lot of these floors. And as they're wearing quicker than they thought they were supposed to, there's sort of this backlash that's starting to come that's saying, hey, this stuff is not that great. They're going to rip it out, but they're not going to put new vinyl in. And so we're seeing a little bit of that trend start to come back towards wood. But the vinyl category is objectively the fastest growing category in flooring right now. It's just absolutely exploded over the last 5 years. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a backlash. But wood, again, is like diamonds. It's one of those things that it's the aspirational product. It's why the vinyl wants to look like wood. But there's absolutely a place for vinyl. Like I don't want to just trash it because that's not fair. There's
I see a lot of it in basements.
That's a great spot.
Where you're not going to put hardwood floors, unless you put a subfloor, with feet underneath it, so it's raised up off of the ground, off of the slab.
Just I have to tell you, this past week I was at a house that was built in the early 1700s, and I was in the basement, which is now it's what I call a wet cellar. There is no, it's just dirt and stone. And at one point, I'm looking at it, it was a finished basement. Back in the 1700s, the slaves lived in one section of the house, of the basement, I should say, and there was wooden flooring in the basement.
Really?
Yeah, it's gone now, but I was like, you're kidding me. He goes, no, and it was like a finished, living room or a living space downstairs, because where the stone wall is, I have to take some pictures and show you, Colin.
Yeah.
There is stone wall, there is stone, and there is brick. And they melded the brick into the stone in certain sections, and you could tell it's in certain sections of the house down in the basement that there were walls. They were either plaster or lath or something to that effect. And I'm trying to look at now at the grade that there was a wooden floor, wooden planking floor that was down there. Very interesting. If I get those,
so cool.
Yeah. This is.
I mean, the slave part's not so cool, but the floor is really cool.
No,
right.
They live downstairs in the oven. I should say the oven or the fireplace. In those old houses, they start in the basement, they go all the way up, and then they, there's fireplaces off of the main chimney. So that big main one in that room right there, I know there was something there because now it's a dirt floor. So there was flooring in that room where they lived. It's not there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Well, in that you mentioned the old houses. I'm wondering if this is in the future. 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, somebody walks into a house and, they just say, look, honey, the original 150-year-old vinyl.
Yeah.
That linoleum has been 100 years ago, the 1970s.
Right.
I almost want
just
from a life cycle. It's a disposable product. I mean, environmentally too, it's kind of a nightmare, but it's not great. And some of the older vinyl, this isn't true now, but Duke University did a study on some of the older vinyl, like the VCT and that kind of stuff. And they found that levels of BBP, which is, I'm going to butcher this, I'm not a chemist, but it's benzyl butyl. It's either phthalate or phthalate. Somebody can correct me on how to actually, I should learn this. But the BBP basically causes like speech development delays in children and obesity, has trouble metabolizing. But they tested in homes with this older, cheaper vinyl flooring, the BBP levels in children in their urine was 15 times that of kids without vinyl flooring in there. So they stopped using BBP as a plasticizer, the industry did, and they use DHT now, which is like dihexyl. I'm not even going to try. But I asked the professor who did the study at Duke University. I called her personally. I saw the study. I looked her up on the faculty directory, and I just called her. I was like, I have some questions about this. And she was great. But I said, it's DHT. Is that a problem? And she said, we don't know. It's never been studied.
Oh.
I'm like, oh.
That sounds about right.
Okay. Yeah. That's not making me feel better. So it could be fine, though. It could be totally fine. I'm not trying to fearmonger. I really have it's probably fine. I have no idea. But
we'll find out in 20 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah, 20 years. Well, yeah, who knows? Something else will get you before that. So don't worry about it.
Since I've been alive, eggs were good for you, bad for you, good for you, bad for you. So
they've been alive since this year. Eggs have been good for you, bad for you since January.
I can't keep up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, yeah. So, John, how does everybody find you?
You can find us at www.revelwoods.com.
Okay.
Super. Our socials are all there too.
All the social media. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, hey, listen, it was great having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and teach us all about wood flooring. So thank you.
My pleasure, guys. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Now, I'm sure there's a couple of our listeners that are thinking to themselves, that voice sounds familiar. I think he's like a legendary podcast guy that, from long ago. Is that true?
Anyone who's specifically into the Buffalo Bills. I hosted a small podcast called the Buffalo Bills Review for like 4 years in the early 2000s. Nice. That's funny.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was my podcasting experience, and it was hard. I enjoyed it, but it was hard.
Yeah. It's fun. We enjoy it. Yeah, I don't think
you guys are good. You guys are better
Bill
at it.
For 4 years. Yeah. That's like me talking about Ronald McDonald for 4 years.
Oh yeah, no, it was the exact, and they were like 7 and 9 for like those 4 straight years. So it was the exact same game. Like I could have just changed the names and hosted the same show every day. It was the exact. After a while, we tried to branch into some other things. It didn't go very well.
Oh my god.
Well, you're welcome to be on our podcast anytime you want to.
Anytime, John.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Awesome.
Thank you very much. All right.
We'll see you,
Take
man.
care.